Thank you, Ralph. We are one family. That's great. Thank you. We are looking today at the healing power of Sangha. And this month we're looking at the power of will, the power to make choices to bring about healing in our lives. For example, healing from resentment. We've had those notions that if we hold on to resentment long enough, it has magical power to heal someone or change someone else. No, it doesn't work that way. Or we've had the delusion that if I hold on to resentment long enough, justice will be done. Or that somehow I must suffer long enough for the world to be made right. And that's crazy thinking. So it's up to us to make the choice to release resentment. Or we may have grief and issues going on in our lives. And one of the amazing things is we have a spiritual community. Whether you are love streaming, whether you are present here with us, however you come to be a part of this community is a healing Sangha. So I want to tell you, what is Sangha? Sangha is a spiritual community. It's a community that meets on purpose to be there for one another, even if there are conflicts, even if there's some differences of opinion, even if we don't all show up the same. I heard this quote one time from Billy Graham's wife, who said, if we agree on everything, then one of us is unnecessary. I think that's very good advice because all of us are unique. We're called to unity, but we're not called to uniformity. And some groups get that mixed up. I used to be part of a group that somewhat thought that it should be uniformity. I mean, there was some little wiggle room, but not a whole lot. They expected all of us to pretty much belong to the same political party, to dress the same, to look the same, to act the same. And frankly, I think that's boring. God has created amazing diversity in sexual orientation, in ethnicities, in color, in faith backgrounds, in the way that we all show up. God has created this amazing diversity. And sometimes people get into a fortress mentality of let's just stay with our own little group. Or, even better, let me just stay by myself. As if that's going to avoid conflict. But what I found is that the greatest conflict comes from within. And when I'm alone, it's all there. I'm part of a monastery in northern Missouri. And at one time, I was considering becoming a monk. And I would go to the monastery and I'd engage in the practices with the other monks. And one day I talked with the vocational director, the monk in charge of new monkeys, okay? I was looking at becoming a monkey. And, he talked with me. His name's Father Albert, great guy. Father Albert. And Father Albert said, Tim, I've got news for you. Whatever you face out there, you will face here. Because you bring it with you. I thought that was pretty smart for a monk, right? Because it's, there's something about being in this sacred fellowship that we can assist one another in a lot of ways to see our blind spots. As I was sharing in the earlier service, sometimes there's been some things that I've done that, I'm not so proud about. And people in the church, You know, there were people who always believed in me. Now, there were some people who didn't, but there were always some people who believed in me. And, you know, some of these people would come up to me and they would say, Timmy, I believe the call of God is on your life. I believe you're going to be a minister someday. I believe you're going to touch other people's lives. And I'm thinking, wow, what are they seeing? I don't get it. And I would also have friends who would come up to me and say, Tim, you're better than this. Because the way I was showing up was not my best self. And I knew that. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been less than your highest and best Christ self? Has anyone here ever been less than your highest and best Christ self? Okay, some of you didn't raise your hand. And so I am so happy that you've always expressed and been that Christ self. But most of us have faltered and fallen a few times. And that's where Sacred Sangha, our spiritual community, helps out. Okay, this is from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. This comes from a translation, newer translation, through Thomas Nelson Publishers, called The Voice. It's a joint effort with biblical scholars and artists and poets who got together to come up with a new way to express Scripture. Paul was in prison a number of times for his ministry. As a prisoner of the Lord, I urge you, live a life that is worthy of the calling God has graciously extended to you. Okay, and here's how we're to show up in community. Be humble. Be gentle. Be patient. Tolerate one another, and I love this phrase, in an atmosphere thick with love. You know, I think that'd be a great tagline for this church. And I want that to be what people feel when they come here. I want people to go out into the Honolulu community, the greater Hawaii community, all around in the world and say, that place is thick with love. Yes. Make every effort to preserve the unity the Spirit has already created. The Spirit has already created the unity. Our job is to live it out, to continue to practice it and be that, with peace binding you together. Now, I like the Jesus book. The Jesus book is a very good Bible translation that's written in Hawaiian Pidgin. Now, I am not, obviously, a native Pidgin speaker, and I look forward to hanging out with some people who are, so I can begin to get the intonation correct. But I want to share with you a little bit of this passage from the Jesus book. For the Ephesus people, the Jesus book. Every time put the other guy first before you. Make nice kind to them. Hang in there with each other. No get hoo-hoo with each other. Because you guys get plenty love and aloha for each other. Hoo-hoo. That word, hoo-hoo, you probably know that word, you know? Anger, getting fed up, like, that's enough. Okay, so, you know, this could be a new phrase for us once in a while. No get hoo-hoo. Okay? So, you might say that to a few people this week. No get hoo-hoo. All right. Thich Nhat Hanh, beautiful Vietnamese monk, says this: the Sangha is a community where there should be harmony and peace and understanding. I think I would put understanding first, because understanding helps me then to live in harmony and peace. When I have understanding of what the other person is saying and what their meaning and what their motive is, then it establishes this foundation under our standing of really knowing what they're about. And that requires listening. Listening is a lost art in our world. People like to talk, but listening is a little bit more challenging. Not only listening with the ears, but listening from the heart. And so he says, that is something created by our daily life together. If love is there in the community, if we've been nourished by the harmony in the community, then we will never move away from love. So it's something that he talks about practicing every day. There's a reason we all get together. There are people who tell me, Reverend Tim, I can be much more spiritual by myself than I can be if I'm in a group of people. Because in a group of people, there's just hypocrites, and there's politics, and there's people fighting with each other and jockeying for position. And Reverend Tim, I can just be more spiritual by myself. Well, of course it feels that way because you don't have anyone to contradict you when you're all by yourself. You have no one to help you to see your blind spots. You don't have other people to deal with conflict and work off some of those rough edges, because in conflict we can really exercise our spiritual muscles. Church, spiritual community, Sangha is not about absence of conflict. That is an illusion. Anytime you have people, you're going to have conflict. Unless they're drugged. My wife and I like this place in Colorado that is up in the mountains, and it's these natural thermal springs, and it's kind of a hippie commune. And it has natural lithium in the water. You know about lithium? It's a mood stabilizer. They used to use it, still use it some, like for bipolar affective disorder, to level people out and mellow them out. And so you soak in these hot thermal pools all day with these people who are already kind of hippies, you know, and you're just getting soaked with lithium, and I mean, everyone's mellow. That's one of the few places I didn't see any conflict. But most of us are working this out, right? Yeah, I think it'd be good. We can take a retreat there. Yes, good idea. So, so anyway, coming together. Sometimes people want to avoid that. They want to avoid getting involved and getting into some of the nitty-gritty of really working things out. Sometimes people avoid relationships for that reason. You know, people will come to me at times for counseling, and they'll want to tell me how terrible their spouse is. Oh, my spouse, they do this, they do that. Oh, it's driving me crazy. Why are they like that? And at some point in the session, I have to kind of gently move them to, you know, since your spouse isn't here, but you are, maybe you're the one we can work with. And that's where it starts. It starts on us, right? It starts with us. And in a sacred Sangha, we learn how to be brothers and sisters with each other. Brothers and sisters fight once in a while. Any of you here have brothers and or sisters? Did you ever get into fights? Oh my goodness. One time my parents came home after a discussion between brothers and discovered one of my brothers with a broken arm. And, you know, just because they had such a good discussion. Anyway. Okay, purposes of Sangha. We are supported by the energy of others. Sometimes I have a rough week, you know, because I'm working throughout the week. Yeah, I don't just work on Sunday. You know, some people say, oh, it must be nice just to work one day a week. But, you know, I'm working through the week. I'm doing administrative things and counseling people. But when I come into this place, I'm uplifted by the energy. I'm uplifted by this sacred Sangha. We learn more about ourselves when we are in relationship. It's easy to kind of escape, we think, when we're by ourselves. But when we're in relationship, we learn a lot about ourselves. If you don't believe that, get married sometime. Just saying. We are there for each other. We're there to help each other out. We're in this boat together. I was talking earlier about, I was in the only high school in Wichita, Kansas, that was like right by a river, and they had canoe classes. And so I took a lot of canoeing, and I did a lot of canoeing in my life, and I was canoeing, but you know, when I went up in the Minnesota between the islands in the lakes area, 10,000 lakes, and sometimes people were unskilled about what to do in a canoe, and they'd stand up and, you know, they'd fall over or they'd start to tip the boat over, and I'd say, sit down, get centered, we're in this boat together. Well, we're in this boat together. We are all in this boat. We're not here to row in opposite directions unless we're wanting to make a sharp turn. You can do that in a canoe. But if you do it long enough, you'll just go in little circles. We're here to work together because we're all in the same boat. We're here to help bring out the Christ in one another, that Christ presence, our true nature. It's too easy to be narcissistic alone. You know, it's harder to be narcissistic if you're with other people. Because eventually your narcissism shows up and they'll point it out to you. Like you're always thinking about yourself. Well, you know, if you're always by yourself, there's no one to challenge that. And you can just stay in your delusional thinking. You can honestly begin to think that everything that you think is true. There's no one there to challenge it. So there's accountability in community. We hold each other accountable. That doesn't mean being mean to each other, but it means that, you know, if I do something that is hurtful or you do something that is hurtful, there's some accountability. There's reconciliation. There's time for us to talk through that and work through that together. There's great power of transformation in a spiritual community. I grew up in a spiritual community that changed my life. And I'm sure that all of you have experienced something wonderful by the power of being in a spiritual community such as this. We're here to help each other from becoming delusional. You know? So we're here to help each other. You know, one time someone from Unity in Wichita said to me, I know why Olga Lucia is in your life. Well, I mean, there's a lot of wonderful reasons why Olga Lucia is in my life. But I wondered, okay, why do you think Olga Lucia is in my life? To help keep you grounded. Because otherwise you'll be, woo! But she helps keep you grounded and centered. See, that's the power of relationship. We all have these different gifts. As it goes on later in Ephesians chapter 4 and explains that God has given these different gifts and these different skills, these different kinds of ways of being to different people so that we all work together for the building up of what they call the body of Christ. That is, all working together to build up this one community, to hang together. Difference is a strength, not a liability. We are not here to bring about uniformity. We're here to bring out your special beauty, your special uniqueness, the way God comes through you. That is why you are here. You're not just here for yourself. You're here for all of us. We miss you when you're gone. We miss you. We need you. Not talking to anybody in particular. Someone's getting an elbow. It was too fun. Anyway. And we help each other to grow, even when we have to deal with difficult issues of conflict. Sometimes people want to avoid conflict, but that's part of how we grow spiritually. That's how we work together spiritually. I mean, the people that I'm closest to in my life are all people with whom I've had some conflict. and we've worked through it. If you have a relationship, one time I had someone come up to me, a couple, and they told me, we never have any conflict. We never have any fights. We never have any disagreements. I don't know, that was a red flag to me. And sure enough, they were divorced a couple years later. I thought, someone's not being honest. Someone's not being authentic. Conflict occasionally shows up, but it's how we deal with the conflict. Instead of trying to hurt each other, instead of trying to put each other down, we're there to work through it. We're there to listen. We're there to be this body, this Sangha together. It's not about thinking the same. It's about working together. That's why we're here as a sacred Sangha. So, there's great healing power in the Sangha. And we have some wonderful people who are joining us today in our Sangha. They are becoming members of this particular community. They have taken classes. They are all in agreement in supporting this wonderful church, this wonderful community. So, as I call your name, would you please come up, and Reverend Levitt will give you your certificate, and then I'd like you to come up here on the stage. And so we have this wonderful group of new members here. Isn't this a good-looking group? And we're going to have a call and a response. And when we ask you a question, it's kind of like when you get married. You just say, I do. That is, if you're willing to, right? And I know you're willing to. So we're going to have a call and a response. It'll be up here. There will be parts that I will say and then parts that we will say together. And those of you who are watching us online, I invite you to join in with us, and especially you, Mary. Okay. Those of you who have stepped forward today, physically and in spirit, are now making a statement to God, yourself, and this spiritual community that you are committing to the search and practice of truth with us. Okay, let's say this together, and I can start. That's all right. Let's say, our friends, do you know that you are never alone? That the omnipresent Spirit of God is always available to guide and help you in any and every way. Oh, yeah. You guys got that part down. Our friends, do you know that the kingdom of God is within you? All right. Our friends, do you agree to strive to integrate spiritual ideas into all the practical aspects of living, such as health, personal relationships, financial concerns, and problem solving? Our friends, do you agree to accept personal responsibility for your lives by building and relying upon God, your inner strength? Our friends, will you pledge with each of us in an attitude of love and respect for all people to work with us to realize our oneness with God and each other? We pledge our love and support to you. We are one family together. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. Wherever you are, God is. And, I have a little more to say here, But I just want to say personally, this is my, and you too, Mary, you are my first membership class here. And it's such an awesome privilege. And in accordance with your own guidance of spirit and in the name of God of love, we welcome you as new members to Unity Church of Hawaii. Woo, woo, woo. And as we sing, "Here I Am, Lord," I am coming around to anoint each one of you with a blessing, and Reverend Levitt will give you a flower as a memory of this day.
I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in loneliness.
God bless you and keep you always.
I who made the stars at night,
God bless you.
I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear
God bless you and keep you always.
Whom shall I send?
Yes, you need to straighten it down.
Lord,
You'll straighten it down. Sorry.
Lord, I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, where you lead
And I bless you in the name of the living Christ.
I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame,
Ingrid,
I will
bless you
tend
in
the
name
poor
of the
and
living Christ's
lame.
presence.
I will set a feast for them. My hand will say,
Ryan, I anoint you.
finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied.
Eric, I bless you.
I will give my life to them.
We love you.
Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. It is I, Lord. I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, where you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I will hold your people in my heart.
Oh, we love and bless you all. Thank you for joining us in the membership of this church. And I invite you all to greet them afterwards. And thank you. You may be seated. Thank you. Let's give them some love.